much what I was just talking about, the Republican Party. God damn, what an act of treason against the country that these fuckers are committing collectively. Yeah, treason. You goddamn right it is. But Krugman points out that all the so-called fake news was true. A hostile foreign power intervened in our presidential election, hoping to install the orange asshole in the White House. The Trump campaign was aware of all this and welcomed it. Well, it doesn't matter if they worked hand in hand with the Russians. Doesn't matter. They welcomed it. Hey, let's step back and let them do their shit, right? Huh? And once in power, Trump tried the best he could to block any inquiry into what really happened. And all this bullshit about whether or not, and this is a spin that little punk asses like Jared Kushner and Sean Hannity try to put on this, the spin that this story somehow doesn't meet some definition of collusion or obstruction of justice. Give me a fucking break here. Here's the bottom line. The occupant of the White House, Donald Trump, betrayed his country, betrayed his oath of office. And now the question is what I said it was 20 minutes ago. What are the Democrats going to do about it? What indeed? But as Krugman points out, and also what I mentioned a few minutes ago, the question is always what are the Democrats going to do about it? Everyone correctly takes it as a given that the Republicans are going to do nothing. Why? That's the part I'm still having trouble with. Krugman says it's because, quote, the modern GOP is perfectly willing to sell out America if that's what it takes to get tax cuts for the wealthy. Republicans may not think of it in those terms, but that's what their behavior amounts to. See, Krugman's a Jew, and I think he's afraid to state what to me is just categorically, monumentally obvious, and that is this move by these fascist Christians to lard up, like I said, lard up the judiciary with these right-wing Christian fascist judges so that they can move the country to theocracy. Why Krugman doesn't bring that up, I don't know. Maybe it's simply because he doesn't want to be accused of religious bias, which he would in a heartbeat. In a fucking heartbeat. Oh, listen to what the Jew at the New York Times is writing. So Krugman lays it off on tax cuts. And to a degree, I certainly agree with him. And when I say to a degree, it just means I think he doesn't go far enough. I would never presume to equate anything I have to say with someone like Paul Krugman, who I think is a Pulitzer Prize winning columnist. But Krugman does point out that the GOP faced its litmus test and failed in 2016 when almost everyone in the Republican establishment lined up behind a man fully known to be a would-be dictator who is morally unfit, temperamentally unfit, intellectually unfit for high office. Remember when we were still in campaign mode? The no-Trumpers, anybody but Trump, any fucking body. Remember when all 13 of them, the candidates, including the orange bastard, lined up on the stage? Remember all that shit? And every scene, John Kasich to Marco Rubio to Ted Cruz, all of them. Remember? Oh, I would no more. I don't even want to stand here in Trump's shadow. Boy, it didn't take long, did it, for them to decide they were very comfortable. The temperature was great in Trump's shadow. Fuckers. In their book, How Democracies Die, the authors of that book, Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt. You may have seen them on MSNBC. They call this, quote, the Great Republican Abdication. The Republicans were willing to back behavior that they would have screamed and farted and vomited and burped treasonous if a Democrat did it at all. But the Republicans have no problem. The immorality and the hypocrisy of these Christian bastards is just indescribable. I've more or less given up. I'm out of adjectives, right? Anyway, the authors of that book say that when mainstream politicians abdicate responsibility in the face of a leader who threatens democracy, it's usually for one of two reasons. Either they have the misguided belief that he can be controlled, which I seem to remember Republicans talking about early in Trump's reign, or they're willing to go along because his agenda overlaps with theirs. That is, they believe that he'll give them what they want, which is exactly what Trump has done. And as Krugman writes, at this point, it's hard to imagine that anyone still believes that Trump can be controlled. But he is delivering on the Republican establishment's agenda, certainly far more than any Democrat would. Jesus Christ. Now, the thing to remember, and this has been true since the 1930s, and that is that the Republicans are committed to policies that are deeply unpopular. Just about everything the Republican Party stands for is counter to what the American people really want and need. By large margins, Krugman writes, the American public believes that corporations and the wealthy don't pay their fair share in taxes. And by even larger margins, the public opposes cuts to safety net programs like Medicaid. Yet as far, Krugman writes, as far as I can tell, every Republican budget proposal over the past decade has combined big tax cuts for the rich with savage cuts to Medicaid. Yeah. So, if the Republican agenda is so unpopular, if the vast majority of Americans don't want this, how does the party win elections? Well, in the age of Trump especially, mainly by lying their fucking asses off. Every single Republican that runs for office, whether it's House, Senate, local, state house, presidency, every one of them stands there and lies through his fucking teeth. Remember what Trump said about Medicare and Medicaid? Oh, we're going to enhance it, wouldn't touch it. But the lies help them because for some reason, and I just cannot comprehend this. I mean, even Bush, he fucked it up, but even George Bush said it. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. What is it about voters that they continue to vote these Republicans knowing they're fucking liars? But mainly, the Republicans continue to win elections because of identity politics. White identity politics. America is a racist country. It was founded on racism. It thrived on racism. We murdered 700,000 of ourselves in order to keep racism. Slavery. This is first, foremost, always a racist country. You can see it every fucking day. Either you see it in your life or you see it in the political life of this country. You see it in the business, education. I don't give a fuck where you look. You see racism of the most toxic kind. So, how do you capture the so-called white working class voter? What the fuck is a white working class voter? The people that carry the lunch pail into the factories? What factories? What lunch pail? What the fuck are they talking about? But apparently that still exists someplace, I guess. I mean, so you exploit, if you're Donald Trump, if you're the Republican parties, you exploit racial resentment. Now, what does that mean? How in the fuck are white people resentful of people of color in this country? White people have everything. That's like these goddamn fucking Christians always wandering around just bawling and yelling and whining about how, oh, we're a put upon minority. We have to bake cakes for queers. Ah! Where do white people come up with the claim that people of color are taking white people's rights and privileges away from them? That is such just incredible bullshit. How are white people this fucking stupid? What is that? I don't have an answer. Krugman says exploiting racial resentment to capture white working class voters while pursuing policies that benefit only the wealthy has been the core of the Republican Party's political strategy for decades. That's why in an increasingly diverse country, Republican support has stayed overwhelmingly white.
Hey baby, down here.
It just... It is so incomprehensible to me. I'm certainly not the brightest bulb in the marquee, but by the same token, I'm goddamn sure not the dimmest. And I cannot understand this. If I were a person of color, I would fully understand if my racial minority were a majority. Let's say that, I'm an African-American black person, whatever. And I'm in the majority. And white people would be screaming about their resentment towards me because I have privilege. That I could understand. Privilege they don't have. White people don't have. I could understand that. But that's not how it is. It's just the fucking flip side of that, the reverse. Where does this come from? Where do these fucking Christians get this, oh, we're so oppressed in the United States? I'm not referring to terror bombings by some other religious group of nut fucks. I'm talking about here at home, where almost every single domestic terrorist is a Christian. White in this country. How are Christians being exploited? How are white people being exploited? I just, look, do Cousin Mikey a favor. Just think about that for a second. Eh? That's your homework assignment. How are you being exploited, my white brother, my white sister? Where does your resentment come from? Jesus Christ Almighty. So Republican support for Trump is overwhelmingly white. And in a fundamental sense, Trumpism is the apex of that strategy. Trump, from day fucking one, he was part of an aggrieved minority. The rapists are coming. They're flooding our border. The brown, the Mexicans, they're gangsters. They're coming for your daughters and your wives and your puppy dogs and your tacos. And here they come, here they come. Oh, I have to protect you. My name is Benito Mussolini, and I have to protect you. God damn. And then everybody referred to this son of a bitch as a populist? Trump? A populist is someone who is supposed to appeal politically to working class white voters based on what they need to advance, to save some money, to take care of aging mom and dad, to make sure they have health insurance, to send the kids to college. A populist politician is someone who works that area of middle class values. I'm going to stand up for you. I'm going to make sure that the wealthy and the capitalists don't fucking drown you with all their bullshit. That's a populist. What Trump appeals to and calls it populism, or the commentators do, is racial animus. I don't like you. Why? Because you don't look like me. Your skin's dark. What? But it works. This is America. That's why it works. In other countries, don't ask me to name them, I can't. In other countries, in other societies, let me do that. In other cultures, in other groupings of people, thank God the younger people, I mean the people my daughter's age, thank God they are, it's been my experience, watching these young high schoolers. They're moving beyond that bullshit. I've been talking about this shit for 30 years on the radio. And I usually get, oh, what the fuck? Why are you calling me a racist, Malloy, just because I'm white? Oh, come on. I'm not even going to go there. So Trump calls himself a populist, and the media jump right in and call him a populist. And he's not. He's a fascist. He's a divider. A populist tries to unite the working class around issues that are positive and important. Trump tries to unite what he thinks is the working class around issues of race hatred. And he's successful in doing so, partly because it's the only thing about his political persona that is sincere. Trump, to the bottom of his rotten fucking heart, is a racist. He really is. So when he comes up with this shit, whether it's against Central Americans or shithole countries or Mexicans or people of color in this country, when he rails against the rapists coming, you believe him because he believes him. It's the only thing about him that's sincere. The only thing. But Krugman says his substantive policies, however, have followed the standard right-wing agenda. In 2017, he passed a huge tax cut, largely for corporations, that disproportionately benefited the wealthy, and almost succeeded in repealing Obamacare, in the process gutting Medicaid. So when does his working class populist base wake up to that? Maybe never. But doing that kind of stuff has endeared Trump to the Republican Party's deep-pocketed money men. Politico the other day reported, quote, deep-pocketed Republicans who snubbed Donald Trump in 2016 are going all in for him in 2020. Think about that for a minute. And they're doing that even though they know that Trump was installed in office in part thanks to the Russian government, that his financial entanglements with foreign governments pose huge conflicts of interest, and that he consistently shows a preference for dictatorships over our democratic allies. Impeachment? Yes. As soon as Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer can get it together and realize that they took an oath and they better by God fulfill it. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. You have your choice. You can listen to the ranting with the audio podcast or listen and watch me lose control with a video podcast subscription. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.